there in Dallas. And we know for the Cowboys, it's all about a Super Bowl, a conference championship, getting to the playoff, getting a playoff win. And none of those things really happened a lot or at all under Mike McCarthy.
They certainly didn't. But who's going to come in next? That's something we're definitely going to discuss in this hour. But first, we're going to bring you the latest on what is trending in the world of HQ. So, of course,
number one.
Who will replace Mike McCarthy? That is number one on the list. A little mock draft action as well. Could the Giants pass on a quarterback? We have Auburn hoops jumping to number one in the top 25. Some overreactions when it comes to the NFL wildcard games. And last but not least, the future oh so bright in Texas. We are not talking about the Cowboys right now. It is Arch Manning time. And then what's trending on social media? It's still weird to call it X, but
it takes me like 4 seconds to process that it's X now.
Oh, well, that's Twitter. But this is what's trending. Of course, number one, Jerry Jones hitting that top spot. What is he going to do? What decision is he going to make when it comes to the next head coach of the Cowboys? Now, we have a few different situations with these coaching vacancies. Some organizations have a quarterback who just needs the right leader, someone to help kind of develop their skills. For instance, Chicago, Caleb Williams, many people will say Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville fits into that category as well. And then you kind of have the flip side of these head coaching vacancies, places that have opportunity, if you want to call it that, to turn around a flawed organization, openings that will welcome a chance to play a little damage control, if you will. Can we say the Jets? The Cowboys, as we just discussed. It's been years since they found postseason success. How about the Saints, the glaring contract issue with Derek Carr there? 6 openings across the league when it comes to head coaches. Many names being floated around. General managers making some big decisions. Look at that cute little graphic of our little coaching carousel.
I love seeing my team's logo in terms of the coaching carousel.
You okay with that?
If we get Ben Johnson, I'm okay with that.
Well, we'll have to ask our Pete Prisco what he thinks about that. We're going to have our Pete Prisco put on a little GM hat. We know that you love playing games, and that's what we're going to do here now on HQ. All right, who would you hire if you were the GM? We're going to start with the latest vacancy, the Dallas Cowboys. Mike McCarthy out. It ends that 5-year tenure in Dallas. Who gets the next shot if you're in charge?
Well, I would look in state, and the guy I would look to in state would be Steve Sarkisian, the head coach at the University of Texas. I think he's done a great job with that program. But more than that, this guy's had experience in the National Football League. He knows what it takes to call plays in the NFL. And I think you could wow him. The concern there is the money. You know, there's some talk that Jerry Jones won't go past a certain number for a head coach. And if that's the case, he's not going to get Steve Sarkisian. But if he really wanted to get a guy who could go in there and work well with Dak Prescott and kind of get that offense back to what it used to be, or at least close to that, put some explosive plays in it, I think definitely Steve Sarkisian would make a lot of sense for the Dallas Cowboys.
A lot of people saying that Jerry Jones, obviously a smart man, he always is one step ahead of everyone else. Do you think that these are conversations that have been going on already? Maybe a conversation with Sark, Pete?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about it. If you decide to walk away from Mike McCarthy and they were negotiating and supposedly it came down to length of contract, I think he has some alternative plans there. And when you do, you look at Sarkisian and what he's done for the University of Texas, it makes sense. Now, he's not alone as a candidate. There are other guys. If you wanted to look at another college coach who played in Dallas, you'd look at Deion Sanders. And maybe that's a direction you look to if Deion wants to leave Colorado. So I think there are options for him, but I think Steve Sarkisian would be number one on my list, and I'd make a call to him.
All right, let's look at the Chicago Bears next. So they fired Matt Eberflus midseason. The Bears' next head coach will get an opportunity to work with Caleb Williams, some other talented players on defense as well. Play matchmaker for us, Pete. Who do you like there?
I like Mike McCarthy. He knows the division well. He was there in Green Bay. He knows what it takes to be one of those teams that can win that division. He's got a young quarterback. He's been around young quarterbacks in the past and done great things with them. And I think he brings, an identity to that team. But more than that, he brings skins on the wall. I mean, he won a Super Bowl in that division. And I think Mike McCarthy is a significantly better coach than he gets credit for. He's an offensive guy. That's where his background is. And I think that would be good for Caleb Williams. So if I'm the Chicago Bears, Mike McCarthy would be number one on my list to kind of instill his ideas in offensive football and his culture on that organization. They need change. Mike McCarthy would be big change, and he knows the division.
The Bears wanted to chat with him last week. Jerry Jones put in the halt on that, but now he is open to whoever he wants to chat with. All right, next up, your team. Jacqueline's team, the Jags, less than 12 hours after the conclusion of the regular season. I don't know. Why are you shaking your head?
My team. What's going on, Pete?
They're not my team.
Oh, they're
I don't
mine.
care if they win or lose.
You care a little bit. There's a little part of your heart that cares about the Jags. Come on. Seriously?
No. You're the mayor of Jags. You gotta own it.
I don't care about anybody winning. I promise you. I do not care.
Okay.
But I will say this. If I'm the general manager of that team, which, you know, if I were the general manager, I would care, by the way. Wink, wink, Shad Khan. I would care greatly. And I think the guy they should hire is Ben Johnson. And I've been saying that for months. And he's the best guy. You go in there, you change the way you play offensive football. Trevor Lawrence needs that. It was stale with him. Everybody wants to point to Trevor Lawrence and how he hasn't grown as a quarterback, but I think the offense was disjointed in large part because I didn't like the way they played it. I think they were too horizontal and not vertical enough. With Ben Johnson, you'll get those vertical shots down the field. You get creativity, and I think he can do for Trevor Lawrence what he did with Jared Goff. The problem is the general manager. If Trent Baalke is in there, Ben Johnson's not going to go there. So I think if Ben Johnson has other opportunities and he really wants to go to Jacksonville, he should use that chip and say, you know what? Trent Baalke has to go. Ryan Newmark's my guy. He's in, he's out. I'm the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
A lot of Ben Johnson fans out there. They, hot name out on the list right now. We're going to go to Las Vegas next. Now, the Raiders fired Antonio Pierce. He took over for Josh McDaniels after Week 8 of the 2023 season, got that full-time job. 4-13 this year. So who's the next head coach for the Raiders?
Well, I think if this was me playing Tom Brady and making the decisions in that
Tom
building,
Brady,
it would be
Pete.
Brian. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I would bring Brian Flores. I would bring Brian Flores into that building. I think Brian Flores would instill a tough, physical brand of football for the Raiders. And there are ties to Tom Brady. He knows the Patriot way. He came up that way. Tom Brady knows the Patriot way. So it makes sense. And I think when you look at that team, they don't have a quarterback. They have to get one. But until then, you got to build up the physical part of the game. And I think Brian Flores will do that on the defensive side of the ball. I think he's going to be a much better coach in his second go-around. He learned from the first time. It was a little hard. It's one of those things. You go into a situation, you try to be Bill Belichick. You can't be. Players will see right through that. I think Brian Flores will be a much better coach second time around.
How much say do you think Brady has in these decisions and helping bring people in?
Ton. I think he's going to make a lot of the decisions. I think he's going to be involved actively because he knows the game and they trust him. So absolutely, he's going to be very involved.
I want to ask you about the Jets next. So they brought in their former GM and Mike Tannenbaum, as well as a dear friend of us here at HQ, Rick Spielman, to assist with their next coaching search. The Jets, they need a lot of help right now. So if you're GM, who can you bring in to help lead them to victory, at least changing around this organization?
Well, if Rick Spielman can do it, anybody can, right? Isn't that the old adage? If Rick Spielman could be a general manager, then anybody can. But, I mean, that search is wide. The net is wide. I mean, they interviewed his brother. Think about that. And I joked around. I said, when are you going to interview your mother and your wife? Are they next? I mean, come on. I mean, it's been a wide search. I like the fact that they're doing that, though, because I'm a big believer. You interview as many as you can and take the knowledge from them and write it all down. And then when you don't hire those guys, you've stolen their information. Oh, well. And I think that's a smart thing to do. But that's a whole nother aside to this. I would hire Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn will bring that kind of culture into the building that they need. Tough, physical, won't take anything, and yet he knows the player. He was a player. He played for the Jets. And I think he would be a perfect guy. If you want to kind of get that Dan Campbell feel on your sidelines and in your building, I think Aaron Glenn would be perfect for them.
Nice fit there. All right, what about the Saints? They fired Dennis Allen in early November after the team's 7th consecutive loss. Who do you think can come in and maybe rebuild that organization? So play matchmaker for us in New Orleans, Pete.
Well, it's a challenge. Whoever gets that job is really facing a challenge because of the cap situation. It's so bad. Age has crept in on defense. So whoever gets that job is going to be one of those guys that's going to be really up for the challenge and feel they can go in there and turn that thing around. I like Joe Brady. I think Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, would make a lot of sense. Remember, he earned his stripes at LSU when he had Joe Burrow and gang throwing it around. He's a creative coach. He's innovative. What he's done with Josh Allen this year has been incredible. Getting the ball out of his hands. They've kind of changed the feel of the offense. The turnovers are down. I think Joe Brady going to New Orleans would make a lot of sense. I think he's ready for it. I think he has that personality that would do well there. I think Joe Brady and the Saints would be a perfect marriage.
Perfect marriage, just like you and your wife, who we all adore, Pete Prisco. You are one of a kind. You've done well as a GM, maybe. We'll see if any of those picks come out to be true.
All right, so when Pete put on his GM hat, he was saying, hey, maybe Sark can replace Mike McCarthy. But just how fast are the Cowboys going to have to move? Our NFL insider Jonathan Jones discusses what's next for the Dallas Cowboys. That's coming up. All right, that big news out of Dallas today. Mike McCarthy, no longer the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. That is, of course, been confirmed by our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. Sources are saying the two sides, couldn't come to an agreement under a new deal there. McCarthy and the Cowboys became the first team since the 1970 AFL-NFL merger to win at least 12 games 3 years in a row and then not make a conference championship. And that's what it's all about in Dallas. The playoffs, getting to the Super Bowl, getting to a conference championship. Dallas's last playoff outing, we know how that went against the Packers last season. Let's welcome in our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. JJ, McCarthy out as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, hearing that the two sides couldn't come to terms as far as length of the contract, but how is the timing of when they decided to part ways ultimately impact their search and landing some of the top candidates out there?
Yeah, so Mike McCarthy was under a 5-year contract with the Dallas Cowboys. Sources had told me that he shouldn't accept anything less than a 4-year contract extension from the Cowboys. It seems rather clear and obvious that the Cowboys were offering fewer years than Mike McCarthy wanted to sign up for, so there was at least some want to on Dallas' side, and I guess maybe they thought that Mike McCarthy over time would agree to whatever they had out there, and hopefully we will find out more about what exactly that offer was. So, because they are a week behind, right, they're going to have to move quickly. And I just reported on CBSSports.com that as part of a mandatory step in the NFL's hiring process, teams have to go through inclusive hiring training. And the Dallas Cowboys, within an hour of firing or parting ways with Mike McCarthy, are already going through that process. So you can argue they wasted time in a week, but after they made the decision, they are wasting no time. And part of that is because they have a deadline of tonight. If they wish to interview any coaching candidates with the Detroit Lions or the Kansas City Chiefs, those would be initial interviews, those would be virtual interviews. So we're talking about Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, about Matt Nagy and Steve Spagnuolo. What I can tell you is what I also reported on Sunday night on the NFL Today, that Ben Johnson has done his interviews. He's packed it up, and he is all focused on the Lions game against the Washington Commanders on Saturday. So I would not believe that he would be interested if there is any interest from Dallas's side in Ben Johnson, because he is solely and singularly focused on the task at hand, beating the Washington Commanders. And so they just are getting through this mandatory step. We will see as things continue who all they wind up requesting to interview currently on teams. One name that I talked about earlier today that I've written about, that folks around the league are keeping a very close eye on, Bill Belichick, who has quite the relationship with Jerry Jones. That is someone who, with a $10 million buyout at Carolina, what is $10 million to Jerry Jones, who owns the most valuable franchise in the world and in world history when it comes to sports. And so we'll see how all of that begins to develop. No real solid candidates right now for Dallas, but at least they can start talking to people as soon as, well, frankly, right about now.
Yeah, and you know, everyone was saying, hey, but Bill has this $10 million buyout. But to your point, JJ, if there's anybody that can afford it, that's certainly Jerry Jones. So the Cowboys, they are going to be looking for a new head coach. That's something the Steelers are not going to be doing, despite 6 straight playoff losses. The Steelers have no plans reportedly to move on from Mike Tomlin. And still, JJ, there's a lot of folks out there wondering why not move on from him.
Yeah, I don't know why they're wondering that. I'm not sure how this even got legs. There's not been any interest from the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's not been any interest from Mike Tomlin to move on. This is about as big a non-story as there possibly could be. He signed a 3-year contract extension. He's paid among the highest in the NFL. He has a no-trade clause. So, you know, usually you could hear that and say, yeah, he's probably not going anywhere. Will there be staff changes? Sure, probably, after a season that was ultimately disappointing. If you go back to the beginning of the year, there were some folks who would have been surprised if I told you the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to the playoffs, and certainly they petered out down the end of the stretch, right? They lost 5 straight games, all of whom to either playoff teams or teams that could have been in the playoffs. I'm talking about, of course, the Cincinnati Bengals there in the regular season finale. So no, I feel like we have to go through this every year because enough people have tweeted about it, wondering if he could be fired or if he could be traded. And every single time the Rooney family tells us that they love Mike Tomlin. And so I think we should listen to their actions, and he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, he hasn't had a losing season, and still, if he's not winning a Super Bowl, folks are going to tweet about it. So that's just the world we live in, JJ. But let's talk about Mike Vrabel. He's back home in New England. The Patriots officially introducing him as the new head coach today. So here's more from that intro presser. Take a listen.
There are going to be some things. Like, I'm not Bill, and I'm not Bill Cowher. I'm not anyone other than me. And I've taken those experiences and I've tried to form what I believe is critical to the success of a football team and an organization. But to say what those are going to look like, hopefully just as successful.
Yeah, Vrabel saying, I'm not Bill, and I'm just me, and I feel like that is the right outlook if you have to fill big shoes like that. But what's going to be different this time around versus the Gerard Mayo hire, in your opinion, JJ?
I think there's going to be an attention to detail there with the New England Patriots. Obviously, there's going to be some veteran experience. You're talking about two former Patriot linebackers in Gerard Mayo and Mike Vrabel. So there's going to be some very similar thought processes, and then there's also not going to be. Mike Vrabel has skins on the wall. He has an AFC title game appearance with Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback. He has a 2021 NFL Coach of the Year trophy. He was sought after by just about every team that had an opening or would have an opening. And so I think that is the big difference here. When Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft met down the stretch of the regular season with Gerard Mayo and listened to his plan for the future, they did not feel enthused. They did not feel confident in moving forward with him. That's why we saw his dismissal about an hour after that regular season finale. And obviously they had their eye on Mike Vrabel. We saw just the video there from when they inducted him into the Patriots Hall of Fame during the Tennessee Titans bye week. They had always had interest in Mike Vrabel, but could you get him? Especially while he was winning in Tennessee, especially when you had coach in waiting written into Gerard Mayo's contract? No, you couldn't. Now he's available. And I get the question a lot. Would they have gone with Mike Vrabel if Gerard Mayo had won some more games? Or did they fire Gerard Mayo because Mike Vrabel was available? I don't know that it's an either or. It can be both, because he didn't win enough games, Gerard Mayo, because they didn't like the direction and future that he had given them with his plan, and because Mike Vrabel was available. Maybe the answer for the Crafts was quite obvious and clear, just like it was to the entire NFL, and that's why Sunday's news of him officially being the head coach, that was no surprise to anyone attached to football.
Yeah, I felt like that was one of the surefire pairs that we were talking about. It felt like a long time coming. JJ, we certainly appreciate it talking to us about the Cowboys, the Steelers, and the Patriots. Getting a look at the NFL head coaching carousel. There are 6 positions open. It was 7, but now the Patriots, of course, replacing Gerard Mayo with Mike Vrabel and officially introducing him as the new head coach today. The Saints, the Bears, Jets, Jags, Raiders, and Cowboys still have some big decisions to make.
Turning our attention to the playoffs next up for the Bills and Josh Allen, a showdown with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Trent Green breaking down the game on the other side of this HQ break.
episodes of Landman are now streaming.
Pushing the chips toward the middle. Men die. Oil companies don't.
Landman. All episodes now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Thank you for joining the Neighborhood Watch meeting.
A quick question. Where will you be watching the NFL playoffs on CBS?
Streaming live on Paramount Plus.
It's not that kind of watch group.
It is now.
Well, the Bills made short work of the Broncos on Sunday, winning 31-7 in Buffalo. Josh Allen passed for 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, while adding another 46 on the ground. Next up for the Bills, a showdown with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. You can catch that game next Sunday in Buffalo at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS and streaming live on Paramount Plus. NFL and CBS analyst Trent Green joining us now. So a huge matchup between these two teams. We got the Ravens, we got the Bills. The AFC will have the same 4 teams in the divisional round as last season. What are your early thoughts on this one?
Well, I'm excited for it. I tell you that much. You got the 2 front runners for the MVP. You got two of the hottest teams, hottest quarterbacks. All the storylines are there. The fact that they played earlier this year. The Ravens were struggling at the beginning of the season. They lost back-to-back games, and the Bills were riding high. So all of a sudden they roll in, and Derrick Henry runs for nearly 200 yards and kind of changed the script on their season. And so I think because they played so long ago, early in the season, I think the anticipation has built up for what this rematch potentially could be like.
You mentioned the 2 MVP stars that we've been watching all season long, and it seems like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have kind of been one-upping each other all year, and you can't really talk about the MVP race without talking about both these guys. So the MVP votes have already been submitted. Who would you say has the edge?
Well, I don't have a vote. I would love to have a vote, but I don't have a vote.
Then you can tell us. Great.
I would say, for me, it's Josh Allen. And that's nothing to take away from what Lamar Jackson's done. Nothing to take away from Saquon Barkley has had a phenomenal season. And you look at the numbers that he's been able to put up. But just between these 2 quarterbacks, you go back and forth. The fact that Josh has 12 rushing touchdowns, he's had to carry the load a lot of times for this team, even the games where the defense hasn't lived up to what they need to get done. A lot of high-scoring games. They've had to score both with his feet and through the air. And he lost his weapons. Stephon Diggs is gone. Gabe Davis is gone. Trying to find the new pieces that are getting into the end zone. So once again, that's not a knock on Lamar Jackson. I even go back to 2003. You had co-MVPs, right? You had Peyton Manning and Steve McNair. It's not going to be that way this year. Back then, it was only first-place votes, so they each had 16 first-place votes. Now, I think you go first, second, third, may even go down to 5th place. I'm not sure all the different scoring that happens, but you can get points and not end up getting, whether that's second-place points that get you the title or whatever it may be. So I don't know. I'm leaning. If I had a vote, I would go with Josh Allen, but it would be really cool if they were co-MVPs, but I don't think that'll happen.
Co-MVPs only happening twice in NFL history. I'm throwing out a new concept out there. What if whoever won this game wins the MVP race? I mean, don't you see that could be fair, right? Maybe?
Well, you just said all the votes are already in, so it's not going to have any bearing whatsoever on this. But, yeah, you can make it, that would be a great pregame speech you could have in the locker room. Guys, not only win and we go to the championship game, but get the MVP vote. So I like it, Jimmy. Let's go. Let's try and get that done.
Win this for me, okay? No, it's so much more than just that. All right, so when all is said and done, who do you think comes out on top?
I kind of feel like the Bills are going to do it. I do. The fact that they have home field, they're undefeated at home this year. I just feel like they are. I know Baltimore put it down on them pretty good back in week 4. I just think they're going to come up. Milano's back and playing. He didn't play earlier in the year. I think that's a big factor. I think they're going to make some adjustments to the run game, try and make it more of a pass game for Baltimore. But a lot of teams have tried doing that. It's hard to stop both Lamar and Derrick Henry when it comes to stopping that Baltimore rush attack. But since you're making me pick, I'm gonna say Buffalo at home.
Okay, so you're going with the Bills at home. Throwing this one at you. If the Chiefs beat the Texans, which team between the Ravens and the Bills provide for the toughest road when you look at that next game?
I would say that Baltimore probably provides a little bit tougher road just because of the two-headed monster running, with Lamar and Derrick Henry. If there is a weakness in the Chiefs' defense, they've been susceptible to giving up some games, some yards on the ground. I know that the Chiefs beat Baltimore earlier. They did beat Buffalo earlier as well. So I just think that I just think Baltimore presents a whole different set of problems for them just because of that running game.
Is there anything better than this time of year in football? I mean, it's just like every game is huge, and I love it. Trent Green joining us here on HQ with the preview of the big game coming up this weekend. Trent, thank you so much. And you can catch that game Sunday in Buffalo at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. It'll be on CBS and streaming live on Paramount+.
Back here on CBS Sports HQ. Thanks for hanging out with us. We've discussed a lot and still a lot more to come. I just don't know why Pete Prisco
where is this going?
The Jags as his team.
We have to have a conversation with him off camera to see what's really going on. There's some deep-seated issues with him in Jacksonville.
And Rick Spielman, apparently. No, but we have a mayor of Jax with Pete, like, headlining it. We have a graphic that's been made for months. So.
And you own it.
Correct.
Despite the record.
I was trying to think of a title for myself. I was like, if I'm not the mayor, what am I? Like,
the Queen.
The Secretary of Jacksonville State? Like, I don't know. I gotta figure something out.
Queen Jacqueline,
Okay.
that's what I'm going to go
Queen
with.
of Jacks. I'll take it. Twist my arm.
Yeah. So there's so many coaching vacancies right now, and that's something we've been touching upon all day. We will continue to do that. The latest, and that's one of the headlines we're looking at right now. We're going to start with Mike McCarthy not continuing as the head coach of the Cowboys. That is the latest from our senior NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. It ends a 5-year tenure in Dallas, which featured 3 playoff appearances, just 1 postseason win. The Cowboys won a disappointing 7-10 this past season, McCarthy's worst record since his first year in Dallas. Eagles linebacker Nakobe Dean will miss the rest of the playoffs with a torn patellar tendon. That's according to NFL Network. He was injured during Philly's win over Green Bay on Sunday. It was a breakout year for the former third-round pick, who tallied a career-high 128 tackles and 3 sacks. NFL Network reporting that Dean is likely to miss the start of next season as well. In college football news, Penn State will be returning its star-studded backfield next season. I was excited to see this one. Both Nick Singleton and Katron Allen announced they'll be coming back to Happy Valley for their senior years. Now, the duo combined for nearly 3,000 yards from scrimmage, 27 touchdowns this season. Speaking of Penn State, DC Tom Allen is leaving Happy Valley to become Clemson's new defensive coordinator. That's the latest from our Matt Zenitz. The Nittany Lions were tied for 12th in the nation in scoring defense this year, allowing just 17 points per game. He will be replacing Wes Goodwin, who was fired after 3 seasons with the Tigers. Elsewhere, 5-star offensive tackle Ty Hayward has decommitted from Alabama. He's ranked 20th overall in the class of 2025, the number 4 overall tackle. Now, prior to committing to Alabama, he was considering Michigan, Texas Tech, and Florida State. Over to the NBA we go, where the Lakers and Clippers will both resume their season tonight at home in Los Angeles. So the Lakers will host the Spurs after having 2 games postponed due to the LA area wildfires. The Clippers, meanwhile, had just 1 game postponed. They will host the Heat. In baseball news, the Giants, Mets, and Yankees have all been told they are out of the running for free agent pitcher Roki Sasaki. That's according to multiple reports. The Japanese right-hander will have until Thursday, January 23rd, to sign with a major league team. And in boxing, former heavyweight champion Tyson Fury announced his latest retirement earlier this morning. His last bout was defeating Alexander Usyk, losing a 2nd straight time to the Ukrainian heavyweight champ. This is the 3rd time Fury has also retired. He did it in 2013 and 2017. Well, CBS has partnered with the American Red Cross to support the communities in need. The organization said it is staffing evacuation centers and providing supplies. Now, you can also scan that QR code you see on your screen right now for more details on how to help.
So a lot of NFL teams need new head coaches, but a handful of teams need quarterbacks as well. Where could Shedeur Sanders end up? We're talking team needs with Ryan Wilson coming up right here on the other side on HQ.
sports news all the time?
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
Back here on CBS Sports HQ, and the Tennessee Titans, they're on the clock. But we'll see what they do with that #1 overall pick, because not only the Titans, but a handful of teams need a quarterback, and it's really a two-man race at the top there with Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders as those top two quarterbacks in the upcoming NFL draft. We know the Browns are in the mix, but are they going to do the Giants? The Patriots have their quarterback of the future. This is Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft. You can catch it right now on CBSSports.com. But this is how he thinks 1 through 10 are going to work out. The Titans sticking with that #1 overall pick, taking Cam Ward out of Miami, and then Shedeur Sanders going #2 overall to Cleveland. We have the Giants going with 2A star Travis Hunter. So we have two guys from Colorado in this latest mock going in the top 3. Calvin Banks there going to New England. They have their quarterback of the future, as mentioned, in Drake May. And then with the Jacksonville Jaguars going the D-line route with Mason Graham. We're going to talk team needs with our NFL draft expert, Ryan Wilson, and we're going to talk about the Patriots, Ryan, because step #1 for them was finding a new head coach. They did just that, to no one's surprise, and Mike Vrabel officially announcing him as their head coach today at a press conference. But what are the areas of need that they need to address in the upcoming draft?
Hey, Jacqueline, good to see you. When you're Patriots and you're picking 4th, you probably have a ton of needs. Luckily, quarterback isn't one of them. They got that right last year with Drake May, but you have to protect Drake May. They've drafted what felt like 1 million interior offensive linemen in the last few years. This year, you have to get an offensive tackle. That has to be one of the primary needs, and you saw that in my mock draft. You mentioned Kelvin Banks Jr. But here's some other needs, depending on how the draft board falls in front of you. If Travis Hunter's there, and you happen to have needs, add wide receiver and cornerback. Christian Gonzalez was a fantastic pick a few years ago. Get him some help with Travis Hunter. That's a run up the card and make that pick type of situation. And then if you want to help out Keon White, the only real edge rusher you have that's still pretty young on the roster, Abdul Carter, makes a ton of sense as well. I had him going just outside I had him going 8 there, to the Panthers. He could go higher than that. He's a juiced up edge rusher out of Penn State, and him opposite Keon White sounds exciting, but ideally #1 would be the offensive tackle situation. If they don't address that in free agency, run that card up. Kelvin Banks Jr., even Will Campbell at LSU makes a ton of sense. And then you can move on and make sure you get that quarterback protected as you look towards the rest of the draft.
Yeah, and the good thing about Travis Hunter is, if you have a wide receiver need, a corner need, he can maybe fit one or both of those. Maybe not the same snap count that we saw in college, but he is a 2A star for a reason. Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys. They still need to figure out who their next head coach is going to be. It's not going to be Mike McCarthy. That news coming down today, but it feels like, Ryan, they need to get some sort of a run game going. We saw them struggle in that department a lot this last season, and it feels like Ashton Genty, who has been the star running back of college football, feels like a good fit there.
Yeah, I think, at one point I counted 20 teams where Ashton Genty would be a good fit in the first round. That's how special he is. And by the way, shout out to Jerry Jones for not letting Mike McCarthy interview last week with the Bears and then decided not to re-up him. That's a baller move, as the kids say. Kids don't say that. But in terms of what the Cowboys need, they need a ton of things. They got to get healthy with their quarterback situation. Obviously, Ashton Genty would make a ton of sense. They moved on from Zeke Elliott. They get help at the linebacker position. DeMarvion Overshown had that serious knee injury. He might miss some or all of next season, and he was playing really well before the injury. Jahad Campbell at Alabama, who just announced he's still 20 years old. He is an absolute dude, and he's going to make himself some money as we get through this draft process, and we talk more about him. I actually had him going to the Cowboys in my last mock draft. And then if you want a wide receiver, and they need wide receivers, and Tedrow McMillan happens to be sitting there, if he falls to 12, the tall wide receiver out of Arizona, I think that would make a ton of sense as well to help out CeeDee Lamb. He is an absolute dude as well. I've talked to scouts who compared him to a more athletic version of Drake London. So that should get you excited if you're a Cowboys fan. Of course, Jacqueline, you got to find the head coach, and we'll see how that plays itself out. But they're still going to have the 12th pick no matter what, even if they don't have a coach and Jerry Jones is making the pick. So I think those three names make a lot of sense depending on which direction the organization wants to go first as they try this rebuild.
All right, let's talk about your beloved Steelers, because you have quarterback, wide receiver, and corner listed as some of their needs. Starting with the quarterback, Ryan, Do you foresee them trading up to get another one in the draft, or maybe taking a bridge quarterback and addressing those other needs first? How do you see it playing out for Pittsburgh?
Another shout out, Jacqueline, to your professionalism for not laughing in my face because I gave you such a hard time about your Jacksonville Jaguars and Florida Gators, but you deliver that like you were being neutral. So thank you for that. Here's the thing.
I do my best.
Back in December 2023, I sent out a tweet that said, hey, do you think the Steelers might want to trade up for a player like Michael Penix Jr.? And I got a lot of pushback. Michael Penix Jr. is not that good. The Steelers don't need to do that. Kenny Pickett can still figure it out. Well, Kenny Pickett didn't figure it out. Michael Penix Jr. might actually be pretty good. And the Steelers had a history of trading up from 20 to 10 a few years ago to get a linebacker. So I'll revisit that question now. If Shedeur Sanders happens to fall, the Steelers are picking 21st, and he's there 10 or 11. Do you trade up for him? I would scream yes, because we've heard nonstop chatter about how the Steelers want to move on or perhaps trade Mike Tomlin because they can't get over the hump. The issue is that Mike Tomlin is such a good coach, he can win with terrible quarterback play. So they win 9 games every year. They're never in a position to take a quarterback. But if they decide to stick with Russ, and that's certainly a realistic possibility, he's been above average, no doubt about it. Emeka Egbuka would make a ton of sense as a wide receiver opposite George Pickens. He's as professional a wide receiver as there is in this draft class, and I mean that with the highest respect and praise because he is so good at what he does. And then Jahdae Barron, the cornerback slash nickelback out of Texas, has had a fantastic season, and he reminds me a lot of Brian Branch in terms of his versatility and playmaking ability, and actually had him going to the Steelers in my last mock draft. But Egbuka or Barron, I love. I don't even hate the idea of trading for Stewart should he slip to 10 or 11 or 12, Jacqueline, just to bring some excitement to that quarterback room and have someone that you trust and can build a team around as opposed to a free agent you signed or traded for at the last minute.
Ryan, I have been telling all of the Mike Tomlin doubters in the office, and there are quite a few of them, I'm sure you can guess who they are, that Mike Tomlin has been able to take this team to the playoffs despite not having a quarterback since Big Ben, okay? And you know I do like the Bengals, so it takes a lot from me, but you know, my dad's from West Mifflin. I do have some Steelers blood, so I do feel a sense of loyalty to Mike Tomlin. Ryan, we certainly appreciate it. Talking us through team needs for some of the teams out there in the upcoming NFL draft. And where is Shedeur Sanders? Where is Cam Ward going to go? We'll have to wait and find out. You can hear Ryan, by the way, on the With the First Pick podcast alongside the aforementioned Rick Spielman. Shout out for Pete Prisco. for shout out Rick Spielman earlier in the show. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.
said out loud. Voices saying, maybe next time, and not right now. Another setback, timeout, false start. Doubt pushing you to shift, shrink, fold, hide. All while knowing inside you, there's more. The momentum in you is you, hits you, builds you. The field is just a field until we step on it. Under these lights, walk-ons are welcome between unexpected and undeniable.